Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Good morning. My name is Sanjeev Joshipura, and I'm the executive director of Indiaspora. And I'm here in Washington, D.C. today, excited about this episode in our series of Tech Talks, which was conceived about a year ago when MR had the idea of bringing together entrepreneurs from around the world, different countries, talking about their journeys. And we've done this Tech Talks program for various countries already: uh, South Africa, India, Australia, Singapore, UAE, and a couple of Tech Talk episodes focused on the US, of which this is one of them. And we have Canada coming up next in March. Just a quick word about Indiaspora before I turn it over to MR to take this session forward. Indiaspora is a non-profit organization, and we were founded 13 years ago by MR. And the mission of the organization is to inspire and position the global Indian diaspora to be a force for good and to connect diaspora leaders across professions and countries with leaders resident in India. Our vision is to be the Davos of the global Indian. And as a matter of fact, we are taking steps towards that vision just next month in February, where from Feb 23rd to 26th, we are hosting the inaugural Indiaspora Forum for Good in the United Arab Emirates, in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And this is an event that we are extremely excited about. We have a lovely lineup of speakers, a fantastic host committee, a diverse array of topics that will be discussed, but perhaps most pertinent to this audience, a lot of discussions about AI, venture capital, technology, both in Abu Dhabi and in Dubai. In Dubai, we have about three-fourths of a day dedicated just to an AI summit exclusively. Uh, but with that, let me just stop because I know the focus of the program is our young entrepreneurs today who have a thing or two to teach us. So, Emma, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Th- Thank you, Sanjeev. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Tech Talk episode. Today, we're focused on three very young entrepreneurs, and I'm going to have a very informal kind of a format today where we kind of learn about their upbringing, how they became entrepreneurs, how they got their first funding, how they started their company, what their challenges are, and where they're headed to. So this is pretty exciting because people like me came to Silicon Valley 40 plus years ago with the same yearning and aspirations in our heart. And now it's fantastic to see the next generation want to outdo us. And so, with that, we have three amazing young entrepreneurs I'm going to introduce you to. First is Anand Kannappan. Anand has a startup called Patronus.ai, and it's an exciting young company you'll hear more about, very well funded to the tune of $17 million by notable investors. And he's our first guest. Our second guest and panelist is Akshita Sachdeva. Akshita is calling in bright and early from Bangalore in India, and she is doing some incredible things with digital inclusion. And we'll hear more about what she does, how she got started, and so forth. And then finally, last but not least, the youngest of the entrepreneurs here, just to make us all feel a little bit old, is Aryan Sharma, who is one of the youngest entrepreneurs in the series and has a company that's been, I guess, recently funded by Sam Altman, among others, to get going in the space of AI. So, welcome to the three of you. And let me just start with you, Anand. Just I know you're a Bay Area person, born and raised here, I assume. So just take us through your life journey in the early days. You're born to your parents were Indian immigrants. Just take us through the part through your education.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for the great introduction, Amar, and great to see everyone here. Super excited to be a part of this. So I actually grew up in the East Coast, funny enough, but sorry, I was born in the East Coast, funny enough, but I grew up in the Bay Area, first in Cupertino and then in the East Bay. And of course, growing up was in the 2000s, and of course into the 2010s, there was a lot of different kinds of technology trends that shaped a lot of things that I grew up with, and of course, it started with in the very young days when I used to play a lot of video games with my younger brother, especially back when there was a Nintendo 64, and that was my first sense of what technology actually was. And then, of course, as I grew up, I saw a lot of different kinds of things with social media or mobile and mobile apps and of course AR VR more recently, and then over the last decade, of course, everything related to AI and machine learning. And so, in the last 10 years or 10 plus years, I've done and have been extremely excited about everything related to machine learning, just because of the idea that humans can actually create something that is very similar to the human brain. So that's always been kind of my guiding motivation or force for why I've always wanted to spend my entire career in AI. And a lot of the things I think about are how do you represent mathematical foundations in the real world. And so that's what initially got me into machine learning, and I ended up doing what I'm doing now in some funny ways. But those are some of the things that I was excited about when I was growing up.
Well, how was your home life like? Did your parents kind of make you do coding when you were young, or do any of those kinds of things, or it was something you just picked up? How was that?
Yeah, I would say I would say my parents didn't actually tell me to do anything. In fact, they told me not to do things. And instead, I just was always curious about the world and curious about a lot of different kinds of topics. And so I think I'm a little bit unique in that I like to be very eclectic about a lot of different kinds of subjects, as opposed to being, let's say, just focused on one for a very, very long time. And so through that, as I was growing up, I decided that I wanted to, as I understood more subjects, I wanted to spend a lot more time with AI in particular. And of course, with the early 2010s, there was a really big wave of computer vision, especially with convolutional neural networks and especially with AlexNet. That's what really got me interested in the whole field. But at the same time, I was very excited about things like philosophy and history and different aspects of math and science as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. You had a very robust education and a curious set of things that led you many different directions, it looks like. That's great. Akshita, over to you. So tell us, where you were born and raised and how you got to where you are today with Trestle Labs and Kiba.
Absolutely. I was born in Faridabad, Haryana, which is located in the north part of India. And while growing up, I think something that had a deep impact on me was when I was 8 years old, I lost my grandmother to cancer. And I grew up listening my grandfather say if there was a doctor in our family, she would have survived. And I grew up wanting to become a doctor myself, so that I could solve that challenge. Interestingly enough, when I was in my higher education, my zoology teacher just came to me and said, Akshata, sometimes it's technology that can help in early diagnosis, and that can just save lives. And that's something about technology was fascinating to me, how it could save lives, how it could empower people, how it could have impact on equitable access to resources. I think that just pulled me towards technology and got me to do an engineering in computer science. With just the impact of it was almost like a chain reaction when I saw technology more like a problem solver and enabler. And in my college, I started working on a college project. Of course, I wanted to focus on building something on the cancer diagnosis segment. But my mentor said, hey, we are doing a project around an inclusive technology for persons with blindness, and would you want to be a part of it? And that instinct of solving problems with technologies just pulled me, and I started working on a college project there, which could it was almost in the form of a hand glove for the visually impaired, that they could point anywhere. It had a camera. It would read, describe, and say things for them. So that just gave them so much power in the hand. And for me, it was just a college project back then. Things changed when I took it to a nearby NGO in Delhi, and there was this little boy who used it, and he said, "Hey, I want to call my dad and talk about it." So he calls his dad and he's like, Dad, some scientists have come to my school. They have built gloves for all of us. I can read, I can travel, I can navigate on my own. And he was super excited. He read a newspaper for the first time. And he just asked me, Didi, when can I get this? Sister, when can I have this with me? And honestly, back then, being a third year engineering student, I had no answer. But that just drove me to solving some of the critical challenges around inclusive education and employment for persons with visual impairment. That just got me in this exciting domain of um, being able to access documents in real time across languages with technology in audio or, in different formats. So that's how the vision of Trestle Labs today, being a 7-year-old company that I started right out of college, is almost on focused on deriving meaningful insights out of printed, handwritten documents across multiple languages that can just, pool in resources to provide equitable access and digital inclusion for everyone.
Fantastic. What an inspiring story. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And
Yes, sir.
finally, Aryan. Aryan, you just came back from Davos. How the heck did you get into Davos? You're too young. You can't even drink a beer.
Uh, we had some friends, I think, that helped us with. We were actually there with a broader group of founders, with actually some ministers from India who are trying to figure out their AI strategy now. But it was an interesting group.
So tell us about your story. Are you going to college? Did you ever try to go to college? And how did you get? What was your early life like? Your parents said don't go to college, or what was it like?
I was, I think, very similar to Akshita. I think that's kind of the thread where I started, where my parents are both doctors, so I was on that track when I was growing up, and I didn't think much for a while that this was five people in my family are doing this. I think this is the track you follow. You end up being a doctor, take over, continue the lineage. Um, I think I got interested in computers mostly because that was the one thing I could do in school. If I did not want to attend classes, the computer lab was open and you could go spend time there, away from academics. And that interest just continued to grow. I think I didn't have exposure to the startup ecosystem in India actually helped a little bit because it started growing and there was activity and there were companies being built around me while I was in high school. And that just piqued my interest. I was just curious what all these companies were about. And my only exposure to tech was through the internet. So a lot of time that I spent in the computer lab was one, trying to learn how to code so I can do more with computers, but second, just reading up these stories of both companies in India, but also the stories of founders in the US, in the Bay Area, like a lot of these movies that were made on founders. And that interest, I think, just spiraled into. Uh, I was fairly confident by the time I got in 10th or 11th grade that this is the track that I would pursue and go down. Um, and the college decision was more, I think, once I decided that this is the path I want to pursue, I had already started working with companies, mostly as an engineer. So I was working with a bunch of founders throughout high school. This was early innings of AI, so we did not work on language. A lot of the work that I did initially was physiotherapy using post detection models, lots of imaging models in healthcare. Um, but I was completing school and parallelly working with these founders. And by the time I ended school, I actually had a full scholarship to come to the US at any accredited university from Schmidt Futures and Rhodes Trust. And that was like happening. But because I had conviction that this is what I would eventually end up doing, and the opportunity cost to not do it seemed too high. I had to convince my parents and just start working on a company after I got done with high school. So I recruited three or four of my best friends, and we kind of started a company, and that has grown since then. But they're still not super happy about. I think it's still on the cards where they would want me to become a doctor
Yeah,
if I decide 2 3 years from now.
yeah. Maybe after your big exit, you can go back to school. So you grew up in Mumbai and then now you're in the Bay Area, right?
Um, I grew up in Mumbai, and I was first supposed to move here for college, but I moved and started a company and stayed back here.
Great. Amazing stories. Each one of you is very different, yet the results have been spectacular. So Anand, let me start with you. So you go to U Chicago, you get your degree, you do all that stuff. When did you say, I want to start a company and be an entrepreneur? Take us through that part of your decision process.
Yeah, definitely. I think I stumbled into it a bit, mainly because I was always really, really excited about applying machine learning in different kinds of ways, but in particular was always interested in thinking about how can you represent the world or some kind of subject in a much more mathematical perspective. And so I actually started, funny enough, as a quantitative analyst, and I actually started a quant hedge fund that was backed by Mark Cuban and First Round and others. We were managing around 25 million in notional value, and what we were actually doing is we were actually mining a lot of non-traditional data to be able to predict different kinds of commodities markets. So, for example, we would actually fly drones over oil facilities in Oklahoma to be able to predict uh, supply and demand of crude oil to then predict the crude oil markets. And so we did things like that to be able to understand systematic market biases in different markets. And through that experience, funny enough, you have to raise some capital from LPs and operational capital as well. You also have to build a team, although smaller. And you also have to be able to take a bet, a strategic bet, and see if it plays out in your favor. And so I think a lot of those kinds of things are make you well equipped to actually build a venture backed company. And so that's where it started. And we actually ended up merging that with a fund that's been out of Bridgewater, which is when I realized that I wanted to apply a lot of things that I do in a much more product specific setting, which is when I joined Meta on their new product org, which was actually at that time just what at that point was just the Oculus team. And then over time, it turned into everything that involved AI, AR, VR, and all of the kind of future bets that Facebook as a company was making. And so that's when I continued to do a lot more work around ML interpretability and explainability. I helped lead a lot of the early machine learning efforts there around that. And ultimately, of course, after a big market inflection point with ChatGPT at the end of 2022, it was really clear that a lot of things that have been focused on for several years were suddenly going to become a really big it's going to become a big moment in terms of market demand. And so then I realized that, of course, I would only start a company if there was a big enough problem to be solved. And I think market inflection points are really important to be able to make that kind of decision. And so both those things were happening at that point. And so that's what ultimately led me to start Patronus around close to middle of 2023.
Right. Fantastic. Akshita, I know you kind of faced, built prototypes and worked on projects in college. So your transition was also quite logical to say when you finish college, you were going to do a startup, right? Easier said than done. So how did you think of that, and how did you get others to believe in what you were doing as well?
Absolutely. I think initial days were hard because I think in India, entrepreneurship was I mean, as a word, it was still coming up around 2017 or so when I started out. I mean, my parents even didn't know how to, I mean, they had not seen examples of, entrepreneurs or startups. Now things have changed. I mean, thanks to Shark Tank India and all of the new boom of entrepreneurs coming up in India. But back at that time, it was still hard, and harder was to, find like-minded people who can join on this mission. And I was happy to really be a part of the kind of incubators and accelerator programs both in India and the US, wherein I was able to gather the right support, the right mentorship, resources to be able to pull this off. So it all started with me applying to an incubation center, I would say a pre-incubation center in India, which was based in a tier two city in Nashik. It's by TCS Foundation called Digital Impact Square. That's where I got there. I found my gang of people who were, equally passionate about technology being used as an enabler to, solve challenges, especially in the domain of assistive technology, disability inclusion, and also focusing on how the same technology can have multiple application areas. So I think some of that really got me the right team, the right mentorship and resources to get started. And as we grew forward, we were supported by accelerators like AFI, Action for India, in India, wherein we were able to again, connect with the right network of people to look at expansion of our business. Going forward, like cut to 2022, we were also part of the MIT Solve and TIE group, wherein we were able to, get to the right support, and that's also somehow, got inspired and connected with Indiaspora. So I think a lot of synergies came in together. It's almost like you're doing something with technology to solve a problem, especially the solving building tech for social impact. That just pulled in a lot of resources for us to get it going. And now even my parents understand how things are shaping up. They have seen me grow from like those early prototypes to really a product that we are exporting to over 15 countries today. So that, I mean, they have seen that journey from nothing, building everything from scratch to what it is today. And today I think the way technology, especially in the domain of AI, is shaping up a lot of you know uh, thoughts, or stirring up a lot of conversations around deriving insights from data, which was a really complex problem, is something that is also the ride that we are taking to to be able to get to even newer heights across different industries. So that's something that's exciting, how we have kind of grown from making content accessible for persons with visual impairment in the beginning in 2017, and today we are using the same or similar technology, which is an highly updated version of the same, to be able to extract data for use cases in health insurance, banking, even complex use cases like media research. So I mean, that's the thread, the journey that I, my team, and my family has seen with me as well.
Aryan, I think your big decision point was you had a scholarship to study and you had a company to start, right? So walk us through the tension between the two, right? Well, it may not have been an easy one, especially with two of your parents being doctors and saying, "Hey, where are you headed to?" Right?
I think the decision was interesting because when I was when I figured while in India that I have to find a way to come to the Bay Area because tech happens here and I should find a way to come here and build a company here. The easiest path was going to college because you come to school in the US, you eventually find a way to come to the Bay Area and do something. And I didn't want to pay for it, so there was a moment where I was like, let's hack this system, like scholarships, like the IVs, like how do I get in without actually having to pay a big sum of money? So when the scholarship happened, it was a big moment of relief and there was lots of excitement because it was this interesting program that uh, it was up to $500,000. You could either use it to work on something or they would pay end to end, like full ride at any accredited university. Um, so my parents were actually happy. They were like, this is like a vacation. Someone is paying for you to go to school in the US and you can enjoy it. You don't have to spend a penny. And they had paid for my last year of high school. I think I got transferred to the school in New York. It was a top end private school. They paid for that too. So it was sort of a continuation. But I think because there was as it was a great thing, but it also set a cushioning. Like I had the lower the worst case scenario figured, which is the scholarship is valid for life. I can always go back to school, and that's kind of seems like the easy, obvious, logical move. What would be slightly crazy and which could have upside, or maybe doesn't have upside, but at least could have some upside if it goes well, is doing something different and maybe starting a company. Might not work out, but if it does work out, there's lots of positive value that will come from it. So I think it was mostly just when I decided not to go to school, it started as a deferral where I'm not going for a year and I'm going to start a company. If it doesn't work out, then I just go back next year. And that seemed like a pretty simple trade-off decision. And I think once I started, when things started working and it seemed like this is a path I can continue down on, I think then the deferral just extended to one more year, and that just has continued since then. Um, but I think it was mostly just that. I think I viewed the scholarship not as it was an opportunity, but it was also just downside protection. It was insurance that I can always claim, but it was more interesting to kind of use the insurance to take a more aggressive trade. With Anand was quants, and I think
Yeah.
just I started thinking a lot. I think a lot in terms of the trade-offs and numbers, but I think that was kind of the decision that was going on in my head, and I tried to communicate it to family and everybody else around.
Great. Yeah, at least you use quant to do some of this stuff. That's great, rather than being totally emotional about the process. So Anand, you decided to start Patronus. How do you get big firms like Notable, the old GGV guys, or Gokul Rajaram, all these renowned investors in Silicon Valley? How do you round them up for a $17 million Series A round? Or did you do that with a seed fund first and then the Series A? Or walk us through how you got there.
Yeah, actually, we did raise a seed round as well, which was a bit over 3 million. So we raised over 20 million in total, and the $3 million seed round was led by Lightspeed and Gokul Rajaram and Stanford and others were part of that as well. So yeah, I'd say a lot of what is, well, we've only raised 2 rounds, but I would say that every round is different in terms of uh, how to approach it and how to think about the story that you're telling. And I'd say at the seed round, it's very much just about really just about the people and the vision and just really what story you're telling and why does it matter. And of course, when you are fundraising, it's really, really important to talk about why the market's really large. Even if it's not large today, why is it going to be large in the long term? It's also really important to talk about, of course, the team and also why you in particular or the founders in particular are best people to actually solve that kind of a problem. And also, of course, to mention why the market's growing really quickly and also how you're going to execute really quickly with the capital that you have. And so typically what's always helpful is being able to write a strategy doc to be able to describe what you want the goal state or the end state to be and how do you work backwards from how do you execute against a plan like that. So that was really what the seed round was. The Series A was more focused on, of course, now we're a larger company and we're around 25 people now, and we have customers in production, and so a lot of that becomes focused on the kinds of customers you have, of course, the metrics that you're hitting, and also the perceived market leadership. This is actually something that I think Gokul Rajaram has a talk about, or maybe a blog post about, where he talks about how at that stage, what's really important is market leadership. And of course, market leadership can be defined by whatever metric the market thinks is the most important. So that could be number of users, it could be retention, it could be revenue, it could be something that is most important. So that was what we really indexed on then. And then, of course, after the Series A, like you mentioned, GGV led our Series A, and Glenn Solomon's on our board, and he's been an incredible partner and thought partner, and also, of course, just tactical partner for everything that we are pushing for. And so, yeah, so it's been an exciting journey. Of course, not just with investors, but even everyone at our company last year and a half.
So, I mean, it all looks so easy to do. So, how many people did you approach for the angel round, and how long did it take to get some of these guys, to get excited and to decide? Just walk us through the angel round part. Was that a month, 3 months? How many how many doors did you knock on?
Yeah, actually, we actually didn't end up raising an angel round, but we ended up raising from angels or as a part of the seed round.
Okay.
So as soon as we quit our jobs, pretty much the next day we went to the fundraise actually, because as we were phasing out of our jobs, we were transitioning and passing things over to other teammates. We were already ramping up, plugged a lot of prospective customers in the market, and I think we ended up talking to around 60 companies or 60 prospective customers or design partners in the month before we actually left our company, our previous company. And so as a part of that, the market research was really helpful. One, because we actually get to build a lot more conviction in our thesis. And then two, because we actually get to have potential design partners for future customers, since we're already building relationships that are useful for the future. And so as we built a lot of that conviction, then we realized we need to move really, really fast because of course speed is everything. And so we decided that we wanted to go into the fundraise. And I think the first or second investor that we talked to, we got a term sheet the next day. And so it kind of went very quickly in that round where we ended up, I think 3-4 days after we talked to a lot of funds, and we ended up closing it within like maybe 5 or 6 days. And it was actually good because we ended up being able to get back to actually focusing on building our product and everything that we had set out to do. And so after that, we ended up meeting other angels and folks that wanted to be a part of the round. And that actually took much, much longer just because of, wasn't a core focus for us anymore because we were already focused on building our product and everything else we were doing in general. So that's how it got started in the beginning in terms of our seed round.
Right. Timing is everything. AI is a hot space. You've done your homework. And so, it was easier to pitch the deal and go down to Silicon Valley and Sand Hill Road. So great, terrific. So Akshita, in India, you don't have Sand Hill Road. And how did you go about raising money from people there?
Absolutely. I think when you talk about raising funds for AI in India, I'm really excited about this new definition of AI that I have recently learned, which is AI for amazing people doing appropriate innovations for actual impact. So amazing people doing appropriate innovations for actual impact is something that I feel is the new definition for AI, especially when we are looking not just in India, but globally. And that's something that's, bringing in a lot of not just interest, but a lot of funding because, the power of AI to solve challenges. Talking about the funding in India, like for Trestle Labs over the last 7 years, I've raised about 500,000 in non-equity funds just through grants and philanthropies, all the way from DBS Foundation to Cartier Women's Initiative, Bayer Foundation, MIT Solve, and lots of other generous supporters who have not only seen the vision, but also seen the growth and have been there to support at different stages of the journey. And I think that's something that's really powerful to see people coming together and shaping up the way technology is changing the world and also empowering lives at the same time. And in terms of the funding status, I think our first funding pitch or for an equity round happened at Shark Tank India season 3, which was that's the biggest platform right now in India, especially when it comes to bringing a lot of not just funding, but more from market visibility and the kind of support that you get from the community when you pitch there. So I think that was the first ever investor pitch that happened. Not the best place to do it, but the first pitch on national TV, which got a lot of visibility in the first place, and that's something that also got the ball rolling in terms of how investors looked at us, which is not just people doing good work in good space, but also the newer applications of our technology, and more than I would say funds. Through that, we were able to generate a lot more revenues. As compared to the previous year, opened up a lot of new business streams. So lately, we have been thinking how customer revenues happen to be the biggest source of income or funding. Like nobody pays you more than a customer if the customer is happy about the work that you do. But in having said that, we are looking to raise a larger round in April 2020, starting April 2025, wherein we are in talks with a lot of people who share the same vision of scaling up our technology for newer applications in the BFSI and other sectors. That will be a game-changing thing for us, which will shape the next roadmap for us as a company as well.
Great, great. Well, it's great you got your 15 minutes of fame on Shark Tank. So that must have been a fun moment. Aryan,
Absolutely.
in your case, how did you get a guy like Sam Altman to fund you? Did you stalk him, or how the heck do you get a couple of $1 million out of him?
I think my case was slightly more, it was maybe a combination of just timing and how everything else worked out. But the, I think through my high school years, I used to cold email a lot of these people. And luckily, they were not as busy as they are right now. And it was not just, there was a bunch of other XYC folks. But YC was a big influence, obviously, when I was growing up because I used to look at a lot of their videos. I used to see all the startup school talks. And I'd sort of cold emailed lots of these founders with a low success rate, but I think a 10% hit rate on 1,000 emails is still 100. So you end up meeting 100 great people. So when we were actually raising money, unlike Anand, I think our process maybe took slightly longer. It took maybe a month because the first week was just figuring out what raising money means. What is a C corp like? How does money come in? How do you structure everything? What do you give investors? All of that. But I think once we got up to speed with that, like we just went to people who we had known or had some interactions with. Our entire team had sort of met Sam and some of the early OpenAI folks a few months before we actually raised money from them. Mostly just to understand what their views on AI were. We were building heavily on OpenAI and we used a lot of their models even before they blew up. So there's early GPT-3, GPT-3 Codex, those kinds of models. And once they committed, we kind of just filled up everything with other investors. And we had subsequently did AI Grant, which is accelerator run by Matt Friedman and Daniel Gross. So that kind of got added on that. But I think it was slow build up, mostly because first we had to figure out how everything. There was a bunch of 18-year-olds trying to go out and figure out what building a company means. And then we went to people who we trusted and liked and trusted them to guide us through the process and started there.
Great stories. I just have one more question in this round for all of you, and then we'll open it up to our audience. So please do put questions in the chat box, and we'll get to them. My last question for this round is, you guys are all young, so who have been your mentors? What role have your parents or mentors played in your journey to date, and where do you see that evolving, Anand?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd say my parents have both played different roles. So my dad, in general, got me very excited about a lot of things related to startups, especially growing up in Silicon Valley. And he had worked on a startup as well in the past around identity and security. And so I think there's some overlap given in some ways we are solving a lot of security related problems for AI, or at least future security problems for AI. And then in a lot of ways, my mom has just been my motivational factor for, since I've grown up. So both of them have been very, very important to me in my whole life as well. And in terms of other mentors, I would say over the years, I've had a few different mentors, I think at different stages of my life, who have played a really big role in my own growth. I'd say in the last few years, there's one person in particular who has been extremely helpful to me, and his name is Michael Callahan. He's actually he was the first investor in Datadog. He's been on their board since then, and is today. And he also is a kind of a multiple time entrepreneur and has kind of seen a lot in the last 25, 30 years. And funny enough, I mentioned him because I'm actually getting dinner with him tonight in Menlo Park, and so he's been a mentor of mine for almost 4 or 5 years, and I always think it's really, really important for everyone to have mentors and coaches in the same way that athletes do, just because investing in yourself is never something that you should ever discount. And so I think it's really important.
Great. Akshita, how about you? How did you kind of view mentorship, guidance from elders, and take us through your story there?
Absolutely. I think the first source of guidance and mentorship that shaped who I am as a person is, of course, my family and the kind of upbringing that they got me through. And after that, I think when I was in a position to take my own decisions, like what's right, what's wrong, what's something that I'm really passionate about as something that I want to do in life, there have been I would say a really good group of people, mentors, who have supported us, and personally me as a person, as an individual, in becoming. I mean, an engineer coming right out of college to becoming an entrepreneur. I think it was that transition had a lot of layers and had a lot of stages and phases in between, right from the first mentor that we had as Mr. Bhanu Prasad, who we met in TCS Foundations Incubation Center in Nashik, all the way to the recent most program that we are a part of, which is Cartier Women's Initiative. I think all the people who have been, mentoring me as an individual and the business as a whole has been a journey. Different people have contributed in different areas, whether it's, how do you build a product, all the way to finding your first customers, all the way to how do you look at expansion, how do you look at team growth, do you still keep the company culture intact. I think all of those key little points have played a bigger role than what they initially started out with. Someone that I would really like to mention is Mr. Bhanu Prasad, because he has been with us last 7 years. He's still the one person you call, and he'll be the one responding back to all your queries, like anything under the sun. So I see mentorship as something that plays a very, very big role, not just in your personal and professional life, but also how the growth and the health and the wealth of your business grows. So I think I would really I really appreciate, and I really feel blessed to have really good mentors in all the different stages of this journey.
Fantastic. And Aryan, these days everything is remote. Your whole company is probably remote. How do you kind of cultivate mentors, physically meet them, when everybody is all over the world and so forth? What's your take on it?
Think I would agree with what Akshita and Anand said, but being in the Bay Area, I think, has been a big accelerant because ability to meet people, bumping into people on University Ave or on some of these hotspots in the Bay, I think is helpful. But I think for me and even broadly our team, because everyone is young, just being around people who've done this before and have thoughts on how not repeating the same mistakes that they've probably seen 100 times was really important. And we almost go out and chase people we want to learn from. So even this is kind of going back to the previous point, but the way we met Sam and many other people, we kept pestering them until they eventually gave in and gave us 15 minutes. And then I think from there on, you cultivate a relationship and keep in touch. One of the most useful things for us has been going out of the way to try to cultivate some of these relationships with people we look up to and want to learn from. And then actually investing the time and effort in learning from them. I think the most important people for us have been, a lot of them have been our investors, but a lot of them have also just been, I think, founder friends who are a few years older than us and have done this before, especially the younger crew, the Brex founders or Nat and Daniel, who both started very young, but have now become successful investors. But I think those are the people that have been the most useful for us, who are probably a few steps ahead of us, but understand what we are going through and are able to point out tactically what we should or should not be doing.
Got it. Got it. So we have now time for questions. I know, Amita, you need to help me out here. Is there anyone who wants to come
Yeah,
on Zoom and ask a question at this time, or are there
yeah,
some
Emma.
questions?
Yeah, I'll just call out their names. They have
Yeah,
typed out questions, and then maybe they can come on and ask as well. That might be better.
sure.
Kiran Ghosh, do you want to come on? Or Sumit Kapoor, if one of you guys, because I see your question in the box, and I can see Sumit here. Maybe I'll spotlight him right now. Go, Sumit.
Absolutely. Good to see you all. MR, thank you as always for running a great show here. Very inspirational stories that you all have presented here. And I wish you the best of luck in your ongoing journeys. It sounds like you're all doing amazing things for this world, which speaks to, I guess, the title of this whole affair. So, my question, Akshita, I really liked what you had to say about the changing definition of AI. And it seems like we have made this shift potentially, and I'd love to just test this hypothesis, away from focusing on advancements of the technology and moving towards applying the technology that has been developed better. And so I'd love to hear if you folks, if that's what you folks are seeing on the ground. And I think one question particularly related for Anand, who I think your company focuses on benchmarking. It seems that there's some tension in the space about how AI is scaling and whether it's scaling its performance in line with the application of compute resources. And some folks like at Anthropic says, hey, throw much more at it, and we'll keep on getting more performance results. And then you have announcements like DeepSeek or Sachdeva from OpenAI saying, hey, we're running into plateaus. And I'm wondering if you've seen what you've seen and are going to see in terms of the scaling of the performance of AI, if you've seen any patterns in your work on it. But those are kind of the questions related to how things are kind of shifting in the landscape of AI right now.
Thanks, Sumit. Maybe Akshita, you can start with answering the application and impact of AI, and then maybe Anand and Aryan, you can go into, where's AI today in terms of performance, benchmarking, etc. So go for it, Akshita.
Absolutely. I think the way I have seen AI changing the space, I think personally, when we talk about some of our clients and customers, we look at them as, when they come to us, they feel lost in the space of AI. Like there's just too much inputs, too many things coming in every now and then. And they are still struggling with the problems that they have, which AI can solve. And that's where I see the shift or the change happening in this space, like players like Trestle Labs or a lot of other AI companies that are coming up today, like every single day. It's almost like the way AI can really look into problems and solve them while delivering a lot of value. That's the shift that I have personally seen in the space of AI, because it's so intense. There's so many announcements, a lot of noise, a lot of inputs coming in every single day. People sometimes feel lost and they are like, hey, I understand AI is big, but can it solve my problem? And if somebody can just come in and say, hey, I have the AI or the AI agents or bots that can do this for you, and that will automate your entire business workflow, and that's something that people are really excited about and also ready to pay for. So the way of building a business around AI is to solve problems that uniquely address a particular customer segment or uniquely address an industry, and that can really help you not just be excited about AI, but also use it to solve real life problems as well.
Great. Thanks.
Great.
Any comments on the second question?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say when we think about scaling, I usually think about two things, usually either data or compute. And I'd say a few years ago, at least a couple of years ago in 2023, there was a lot of talk about how we were running out of high quality training data. I think there was even a research paper that came out that said high quality training data will run out by 2026. And so at that point, a lot of people thought what would happen is most people would just gravitate towards low quality training data, which might be social media comments and things like that. And so I'd say that thinking has actually shifted pretty dramatically in the past year, because there's a lot of benefits, and of course we're seeing a lot of pretty significant advantages to synthetic data generation, especially to even trained models or pre-trained models as well, not just fine-tuned models. And so because of that, I would actually say that we're not really data limited in the sense of that word. And so certainly I think there's a lot more that can happen when it comes to being able to see scaling improvements, especially when you think about data. And then the same way, I would say we're certainly still compute limited, which is why I think the market overreacted a couple of days ago after the DeepSeek announcement. Of course, I would expect compute to still be a really, really important thing, and expect that to continue to be the case. And so when we think about benchmarking, actually at Patronus, we don't necessarily focus as much about understanding differences between compute or data, but rather more on quality from, let's say, a practical use case or a business use case perspective. So it's more focused on for example, understanding performance against, it could be evaluation data sets or benchmarks or even different kinds of systems, whether they're RAG systems or agents or other types of architectures. So it's much more focused on the end user or the end application. And so I describe it as more, let's say, extrinsic evaluation as opposed to intrinsic evaluation.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Aryan, any comments on this? I know.
Yes,
I think Anand covered pretty much
yes,
on it, but
sorry.
Great. Let's have our next question, please.
Yeah, we have somebody called Nabaran Ghosh who wants to ask a question. Please go ahead. I'm just going to read the question, MR. I have the
Sure.
question
Yeah.
in the box. Basically, the question is, any insights into global competition in AI in the next 3 years?
Wow. I think if we all knew it, we'd be billionaires. But anyone want to take? I mean, we had, for example, at Indiaspora an AI summit in March of last year, and again in October, and it was completely different. Everything had changed between March and October, right? And I'd venture to say by next March or in 2 or 3 months, it's going to change again, right? So, question really maybe to rephrase is the moving landscape of AI. How does one navigate that? Because there are new models, there's new performances, there's new applications, there's new versions, there's also video, there's photography, there's all kinds of other multimodal events happening. So, any comments on the shifting landscape, if you will, of where AI is going? Anand, do you want to go for it?
Yeah, I would say there's a few different shifts I'm really excited about. One is, of course, the last few years, or maybe even 4 years, has been dominated by the transformer architecture. And so I'd say that really excited about emerging architectures that aren't just dependent on, an autoregressive approach, especially because autoregressive, especially with things like transformers, you are limited by the fact that you're only looking at next token, like next token prediction. So things like state-space models, in my opinion, are a really exciting approach for the future. And there's another Lightspeed portfolio company that we know well called Cartesia, who actually one of the founders is also of Indian origin. And they've done a really great job in terms of building state-space models and new products around that. So I'm also, of course, very excited about just the future of LM evaluation research in particular, especially when we think about the application of things like small language models and also what evaluation agents look like in the future. And so that's a lot of the kind of research work that we're doing on our team, on our research team, especially not just last several months, but as we think about our upcoming roadmap. I'm very excited about just generally what AI research looks like, not just from a training perspective, but especially in post-training, which I'd say has been the biggest trend in the last several months, especially when you look at character AI acquisition and those are things that we're going to expect to happen this year.
Right. Aryan, I know you're deep into all this stuff being here. What's your take?
I think new architectures are exciting for sure, and we've been just because of the nature of the work that we work with lots of enterprises that used to consume BPOs and traditional labor and are now shifting towards more software and AI-led approaches to get the same back office tasks done. And we've seen an increasing usage in voice as just a capability stack. Increasingly, voice agents are becoming more exciting. They're becoming more and more real, and we've seen performance improvements to the point where almost you could voice agents probably perform better than human callers in many cases. I think I'm generally broadly just excited about having a lot of specialized infrastructure, the kind that Anand and Patronus are building, or just deep vertical applications. I think you could not go wrong building at the application layer. If models and foundation models have always been a capital intensive game, and now I think maybe something's changed, but I think they'll still remain a capital intensive game with lots of compute and data concentration. But just if you want to build a great business, I think focusing on verticals where you have access to customers and distribution and just building specialized applications for them, I think is you can't go wrong with that. So I think those kinds of companies, I think I'm excited to see more of that happen over the next year or 2 years, 5 years.
Great. Akshita, I mean, in terms of what's happening in India and what you're up to. How do you see this landscape shifting?
Absolutely. I think it all started with what AI can do in the, as in a more like a chatbot or kind of a space. But I think the way AI is shifting, especially, when you bring multiple AI agents together to work as a team, that's something that's the shift that I can foresee and I can envision in the going, in the next maybe not even 2, 3 years. Like I think the AI our revolution has shortened that time span to 2 to 3 months. So maybe in the next 2 to 3 months, we can already see, AI, virtual AI teams working together, doing things, not just back office, but a lot of other, whether setting up an AI development team. I think I see a lot of AI agents coming together to do tasks which humans can either do, but they are too mundane, but they are or the other kind of tasks which are too complex to handle. I think I see that the companies, especially coming up or AI being developed in those areas, is an exciting space, but at the same time, it will solve a lot of challenges and in general like increase how what the productivity or efficiency metrics really mean to any company. So I think the way companies would going forward leverage AI to be able to become more productive and more efficient, that's what it will be changing. So something that I feel in the changing landscape of AI, what will stay constant is delivering value and the ability to solve customer problems. If we are able to do that with AI, that's how I'm excited more about the application areas of AI as well.
Got it. Got it. Couple of technical questions to get out of the way.
We have a hand raised, MR.
Oh,
Hero
okay.
Chaudhary.
Who is it?
Yeah, Hero.
Hero. Hey, Hero.
Hey, Amar. Thank you for doing this, and hello everybody from Singapore. I'm looking forward to the Forum for Good, by the way, in Abu Dhabi. So my question is specifically for Anand and Aryan. I'm just curious if there are entrepreneurs building companies in Valley or other parts of the world that that specifically focus on proprietary first-hand data, especially the data that otherwise will be very difficult to use, and use that to build a great AI tools and use cases, especially data that you collect through sensors in specific industry and so on, because that can become a pretty big moat over time and differentiation. So if there is any comment around that, I would love to learn more. Thanks.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely. So I would say, of course, I would say a company like Scale AI is certainly one that is focused on actually developing first-party data or proprietary data for customers that they work with. And typically, it's just because their core business is human workforce, a global human workforce that can enable that. But I'd say over the last few years or several years, there are other companies that have developed other kinds of proprietary data sets that are certainly useful for training models. So, for example, there are companies like Genscape that have for example, deploy satellites to be able to collect images and videos of geographies across the world, and to be able to use that to train, for example, computer vision models, or today like multimodal models, for example. I would actually even say that we have actually done work where we've developed LLM benchmarks that are human generated or human annotated as well. And so one example of this is we developed the first standardized domain-specific benchmark called Finance Bench, specifically for financial services. And we did that to be able to help different kinds of financial services practitioners be able to evaluate and measure performance of language models. It was actually around the end of 2023, and I would say it was actually what put us on the map initially, because it was covered by TNBC, and then some of our customers include companies like OpenAI, NVIDIA, Databricks. So here we're all using things like Finance Bench, mainly because it is proprietary data that is useful for evaluation.
Got it. Aryan, your take?
I think so. There's obviously these Scale and other companies offer to create these specialized data sets too, but I'm a big fan of some of these vertical companies that have just created these proprietary data sets for themselves. There's this company called EvenUp, for example, also a Lightspeed company, but raised from many other people too that work in the personal injury law space. And I think those kinds of categories, if you are one of the first service providers and you get integrated in the right kind of service firms, in their case, lawyers and law firms, you collect a lot of proprietary process data, how approvals work, how denials work, how appeals work, etc. And you can keep funneling that back into fine-tuning your post-training models, fine-tuning, etc. You just make your service more defensible and high quality over time. And OpenAI and many others will go and try to buy data off of these specialized companies. But I think the only one of the few defensible things in all of AI right now is these hyper specialized data moats in vertical markets. So I think even up is a good example of someone that's done this recently.
Great.
Thank you.
Aryan. And again, I think we have run out of time, but I want to kind of close up by asking the three panelists, some advice you'd give to other young people considering becoming an entrepreneur, because it's not an easy journey. It's a 24/7, 365 day a year journey for a long time with no known exits till something happens. And 90% plus of the companies like yours fail. So you got to be passionate, you got to believe, you have to have conviction doing this. What is the advice you'd give to some other youngsters who come up and say, hey, should I become an entrepreneur? What should I look out for? What are the challenges? What are the pitfalls? Akshita?
Sure. Something that I would like to share with younger entrepreneurs of how they can, embrace this journey of entrepreneurship is find something that really excites them and they find joy in, because it's gonna, as you said, MR, that it's gonna be a long journey, and if you are not enjoying it enough, it's gonna, fade out and in between. So I think something that's I would like to share is, if you find something that you're really passionate about and just do it in a way that you can make other people happy, you can deliver value, you can make money at the same time, and it's not going to be easy. So just persevere on the path and take it to success. And even if you feel midway that, it's not working out, don't feel guilty in, killing your baby or giving up on your, first idea, because there are so many ideas, but execution is all that matters. That's the moat of the entire industry. That's something that I would like to share.
Thank you. Aryan?
I think the thing that this is one of the things that lots of people say, but if I would have known how not easy the process is, then I probably would not have jumped in and started working on something. But I think sometimes you have to just take the leap of faith if you believe in a mission and an idea. But I think the thing that works for me is just working with the right kind of people is where I get energy from. And I think that's how you can keep going and run the marathon. So the only thing that I would recommend that people also think about is if you have the right group of people that you would like to work with for the next 5, 10, 15 years, and you can see yourself enjoying working with them for the long term, then that is probably a bigger decision than what you work on, or because that will keep changing over time. If you have the right people around, I think you can do this for the long term.
Great. Anand, last word?
Yeah, I would say that one thing that I usually like to say is that building a startup is very similar to building a movement, mainly because you have to be able to convince a lot of people why what your vision is really, really important for the world. And so you have to be able to convince yourself first why it's important, but then after that, you have to, of course, convince people to join your team and your company. You have to convince investors to invest in you. You obviously have to have built something that is very, very meaningful to users and customers as well. And so I'd say that in terms of advice, being able to not just, of course, focus on let's say relevant technical skills, but also be able to build the right kinds of interpersonal skills, whether it's charisma or leadership, is really, really important. And I like to say that, of course, building a movement or leading a movement is not necessarily specific to Silicon Valley. And so even studying leaders in history, whether it's Queen Elizabeth or Napoleon or Winston Churchill or Mahatma Gandhi, is I would say a really really important thing. Mainly because I think there's a lot of personalities, traits, and practices that you can learn from centuries of history that can help you build a movement, which is your startup today.
Awesome. Guys, I've started companies in the past and have been a co-founder before. Having listened to your three stories, maybe I should go start my next one now. So I'll definitely take a look at seeing if I can participate in another startup in the future. But really, Anand, Akshita, and Aryan, I really want to commend you. You guys are truly inspiring. You stand so much for the Indian diaspora and India in general. Really wishing you all the best, and we hope we'll see you guys soon in Abu Dhabi as well. So thank you, everyone. Good night.